fast forward to the age of AI, we can quantify like what altruism looks like, what the average donor and non-donor look like. And at this moment that we're facing the biggest headwinds our sector's ever faced, we just happen to land at the same time where we have the most profound technology that humans have ever created that will literally change everything about what's possible. I mean, how do you not be encouraged by that?
Like, I'm a huge Gary Vee fan. Mm-hmm. So I listen to Gary Vee on his pods talk about, like the first time you ever heard the dial-up,
right.
For the internet.
I know.
And then I like listen to like some of your or like a transcription of like you talking about, okay, and I want you to tell it for the audience. So it's like, this has had to be probably 10 years ago where you're talking about like, okay, this thing called AI is coming.
Yeah.
And you said people looked at you like you had 3 eyeballs or something along those lines. Three, exactly. Yeah. Or, but talk about that and just how far things have come, if you don't mind. Because here we are now, and we have a lot to unpack, right? As a sector, not on this necessarily just on this conversation, but we'll unpack a lot. But it's just fascinating that you were so early, a pioneer, and an inventor in the space, frankly. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that goes back to, being an early adopter, even at a young age. Like, I was the kid who would like literally take things apart just to see how not that I could put them back together, but just to see how they were built, and just became, really curious about things early on. And then, and frankly, it helped. I got into the nonprofit sector on accident because I thought, the path of business was, go get your degree, start a business. So I started and sold 2 tech companies, and then basically he was serving as a board member at a local Boys and Girls Club. And so that's where I got my nonprofit roots. And they're an incredible organization. In fact, the most meaningful kind of career experience I've ever had was being at that club, and spent what I thought would be, a few months, ended up being 7 years. And, I just very quickly, when the pieces of the universe, collect and you feel like you've got flow and you're in the place that you're supposed to be. I mean, all those things clicked as I was planning on, I was actually getting my MBA. I was going to go work on Madison Avenue, really loved, brand and marketing, and none of that mattered anymore. Like, very quickly, it just melted away. And so spent 20 years in the nonprofit sector. And then at a certain point around 2017, just became completely disillusioned by the lack of innovation in our sector, and thought it's not okay anymore. We have to do something.
Yeah. I mean, speak to that too. It just seems like there's just this constant part of me struggle in the space with folks that have, we've always done it this way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? That's not a very scientific way to put it, but it's frustrating, but also more than anything, I'm very optimistic. It's very encouraging as well. That's the outlook by so many folks. And it seems like it's changing at a rapid pace, but there's so many people to touch, right? Yeah. For lack of a better explanation, that it is, I think it is encouraging. It seems like you're leading, definitely a big part of leading that surge, that change.
Yeah. I mean, I think if we really recognize what this moment means for society, not just, our roles and our organizations, but society at large, I mean, anything that was not possible is now entirely plausible. So AI represents the most significant shift in how anything has been done, or what the limitations of what was possible in the past is like gone. And so this is the opportunity, I think. I remain optimistic too. What it will require, though, is a lot of curiosity. And our sector has to really get out of its own way of thinking what's not possible. That scarcity mindset won't play well in an exponential world. And so like, we just need to be bold, and we need to get creative, and we need to hire creative people. And so there's so much opportunity here, and that's what the world represents. And there's no sector that needs that more. So that's where I get like really passionate about.
Yeah, it seems like you're, like I said, leading the charge at the forefront of it. We're grateful for it. And, I'm not big on monikers, as I mentioned, but it's like, you seem very entrepreneurial in your approach, and I mean that with the most respect. But with that comes different synonyms that apply, like curiosity, like you've mentioned a few times. Also, almost like I'm using this for myself, for instance, but and you tell me what you think. But like, just like stubbornness, almost like a disruption. There need, like a disruptive behavior set, right? That absolutely needs to shake this sector to the core to get the goal that we all want to see. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think a lot of us can get dismayed by the lack of innovation, but then recognize it's actually part of the structure of how nonprofits have been essentially measured basically measured based on cost per dollar raised. So most of my career, this is where, I've always approached my work in nonprofit as a for-profit practitioner. And this is it's way more popular now, but I mean, back in 2001, if you're a nonprofit director and you're talking about ROI, I was doing that publicly and afraid my car was going to be keyed after a conference, at a nonprofit conference, so it was just not okay. It's how dare you, don't bring that business jargon into this world. So it's shifted a lot, but at the end of the day, the limitation for what people are willing to create and explore are based on how they're incentivized in their role. And so my first book really dives in, to kind of some of those limitations and the decline in charitable participation.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're measured based on filling a leaky bucket, you're going to trade revenue for relationships all day long. And so I think, most of my career was these conversations with CFOs and finance around cost per dollar raised, and making sure that was, in a reasonable. Dan Plata talks a lot about this, but the lower the better, and that basically by definition disincentivizes innovation. So if you're trying to keep your costs at 17 cents on the dollar and you're getting penalized if you're going to 18 cents, it's absolutely ridiculous. So you don't take risk, you don't innovate. And so I think there's more awareness now that that's not a winning strategy. And that strategy has played out in the decline in charitable giving. So while total dollars up, that's more of a symbol of inequality and increase in wealth. But the fact that in large part, when I started fundraising, 2/3 of Americans were giving. Now it's 46.8%. And it's just it's just so different. So that strategy of low cost, being the low cost driver of change does not apply. It does not work.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't lead to growth, obviously, right?
Right.
So many levels. Talking about the book, I got into the book, and as I mentioned to you, I'm stubborn, and you're talking in the book about, and I went straight to the fundraising chapters. Of course, I needed to, just to kind of because I'm a student, and I think that also we can shed some light on just being a student of everything that's happening if you're in the fundraising space, and how that's going to play out so well over time for everyone, no matter what your title or what shop you're working for or what shop you're looking to stand up. But let's just get into that, like you said, the shrinking donor pool that you talk about in the book. And my limited knowledge, although I am a student of AI and I appreciate it very, very much, and we use it as a company daily. But the shrinking donor pool, I have to think, though, once again, I'm very glass half full in a general sense, but I have to think that with the advent of these technologies, that it is going to widen the donor pool. Obviously, add to more dollars in the door, so to speak. But talk to me, just give me some of your thoughts and opinions about that, about utilizing these technologies to widen the, not the impact necessarily, but just the eyes, frankly, on these different organizations.
Yeah, it's a great point. And I think that's changed quite a bit because starting, back in 2017, when I was really learning a lot about machine learning and deep learning, and what that meant was, for us, and in very real terms, as a leader of a nonprofit, we were raising 175 million a year at that point. We had this goal, kind of a mandate from our CEO to increase our revenue by 25%, but we weren't allowed to hire more employees. And so that was that moment that you have to, rethink everything. So, incremental changes won't work in an exponential age. And so we got really curious about well, what is the private sector doing, and how is, business from when I went to business school a long time ago, how has that shifted? And it shifted dramatically from, even the perception that Nike would be successful if they sold a pair of shoes to everyone on the planet, to a dramatic shift within a 15-year period where they no longer cared about everyone on the planet. They cared about a specific subset of people that are likely to actually buy this pair, the next pair, the pair after, and convince their, buy Nike for all their family and things like that. So it was really borrowing a page out of the for-profit playbook and really first recognizing that it didn't matter how much we asked, when we asked, in what way, if it wasn't the right person to begin with. And
Right.
predictive AI was definitely the answer. I mean, that solved, a 2000 plus year old question that Aristotle posed, which is like the idea of giving away money is easy, but how to give it is hard. And, how to decide when and who and how much. So we got really good at figuring out, well, like, what are the correlations between people who gave versus not give, and it demystified a hypothesis or some sort of, I don't know, myth that we had in our sector all along, that was wealthy people are better donors. And our very first data science project in 2017 was, with machine learning, proved that wealth was less than 10% indicative of whether or not someone was likely to make a gift, because altruism is very different than how wealthy you are. Now, how much you give, if you are altruistic, how much you give is related to how wealthy you are often, but it is not how 80+% of nonprofits fundraise. They tend to like prioritize wealthy people, use wealth screening, and then just put all those eggs in that basket. And that's what's led to this like total churn and disenchantment with the sector. And now, fast forward to the age of AI. First, predictive AI came first. So now we can quantify like what altruism looks like, what, the average donor and non-donor look like, and with a pretty reasonable degree of accuracy. But then it only solved for one aspect. It didn't solve for like, now that we know who, how do we do it? And so again, taking a look at the private sector, going deep into R&D on using generative AI to create personalization at scale. So that's the optimistic piece, right? Because this is the first time in history that we have, even with all of the challenges, we have so many challenges in our sector right now. I mean, you can write tons of books about, political upheaval and societal pressures and all these things. But at the end of the day, while we have all those challenges, we're also presented at the same time, and not by, I mean, I think it's just a coincidence, to be honest. It wasn't like one came because of the other. I don't think it's a direct correlation that at this moment that we're facing the biggest headwinds our sector's ever faced, we just happen to land at the same time where we have the most profound technology that humans have ever created that will literally change everything about what's possible. That's like, I mean, how do you not be encouraged by that? And if it just takes an open mindset to really be curious and explore what's possible, then, we can do that in spades.
Yeah. Yeah. God, there's so much to unpack there, brother. What I think though too is like, it's like the challenges that you mentioned is I heard a really beautiful talk with Seth Godin. It was from like 10 years ago. Loved Seth from a marketing perspective, listened to him on a pod. It was a pod that I listened to recently that was 10 years ago, but I first started listening and consuming his content at least 10, 12 years ago. He's like on Tim Ferriss and stuff like that. I'm like, this cat's fascinating.
Yeah.
And of course, inevitably, he starts getting the questions about fundraising and probably because he's around wealthy people and what have you, or whatever. I don't know the origin. He said something fascinating and it mimicked what you were just talking about challenge. He's like, there are no more comfortable problems.
Right.
And awareness is not enough. It's like, we know, like, you know what I mean? And if it's not a challenge, if the challenges that we're facing right now, but the challenges that we're facing, there always will be.
Right.
There were 5 years ago. There were 10 years ago. There's going to be another set of challenges in another 5, right? It's just, it's cyclical. It's life. It's all of these things. But as you said, that the coalescence of like that and this opportunity that's right in front of us is just so massive.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think what we have in our favor now when we're dealing with some challenges that we didn't have like earlier in my career is we actually have data that we can look at and quantify, what is, if I do this treatment or if I try this strategy, how do we actually measure the effectiveness of, what we consider like a high yield activity? And so, for so much of my career, it was a lot of gut, and gut is still super, super important, right?
Sure,
and like,
sure.
connecting dots, but that
And it gets better over
alongside,
time.
yeah, it does. Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And instincts and all that. But to have that and then have data behind it, be like, yes, okay, this is working. Let's double down on that. This is not, like, let's divest from that and whatever it might be. So yeah, the problems, honestly, they never get easier. And I think that was a big reason why I wrote my first book, which was I spent 20 years fundraising. And you would think after 20 years, your job would get easier. And it did not. Like my job got harder every year.
Yeah.
And it was like, because essentially we were raising more money from less people for 20 years. And I didn't really know the effect of that. But at the end of the day, I started projecting out in the future. I'm like, at what point does this become like the self-fulfilling prophecy that we're just all competing for wealthy people? Like, and at the end of the day, just burning everybody out.
Mhm.
And that was kind of an inevitable conclusion that if we don't change our focus from transactions to relationships, then we were going to do that.
You bring up, I had an opportunity to kind of get into the weeds a little bit about you defining these different modalities, as I like to call them, of AI, right? And I want you to do that for the audience, for the folks that don't know. And I want to get into supercomputing because I totally, I geek out about this stuff, and I'm very fascinated with it. You write about it in your recent book, Nonprofit AI. You talk about, and I took notes. I had to because it was a really good chapter. The AI driven personalization in fundraising, what you discuss, and I don't need to tell you that fundraising is even more so than ever, I think, relationship driven.
Right.
For the folks listening, talk about, just make that marriage, when we can get into AI as a marketing tool and all those things about just creating these, because it's so relationship driven. What is and I asked you a question, but I want you to, what is the disconnect, frankly, between the tech and the relationship piece that you think people are missing?
Yeah, I mean, there's probably a lot to unpack. We probably need a few hours.
Sorry, brother. Yeah, sorry.
But I mean, again, going back to my career, where my focus was on filling a leaky bucket. So again, going back to the system of fundraising, the brokenness of that. I mean, it starts at a cultural level, and it's not that boards ever come to a board meeting and consciously want to do harm to an organization by driving out any innovation or causing that. But in all fairness, like, I don't blame CDOs for not being innovative and trying new things and experimenting, because I knew that I kept my job if I filled that leaky bucket. And, I was going for like, big swings to do that because that was like what I thought the safer bet. So there hasn't been a lot of that. But I think this is where our realization was back in 2017, 2018. We built our first machine learning model to quantify a few million patients and to measure the likelihood that, looking at, actually at the time, it was like 40 million constituents, only 2% of had actually ever made a gift, and measuring the likelihood that, or the correlation between those that did versus those that don't. And we realized, like, there's a sense of relationship. To your point, there was a sense of like belonging and familiarness with the organization that the people who made gifts, had. That wasn't surprise. Like, it's intuitive, but like once we saw the data, we're like, oh my gosh, like this is really meaningful. And then we talk about
proven right,
right? And we start peeling back the onion even more, and we're like looking at events and like, what's a relationship to events? And events through most of my career were like, quote unquote, this like necessary evil. That's how people would talk about it. It's like, well, you have to do it, but it's like they're so expensive and the ROI is not great. And at the end of the day, from a data science perspective, somebody attending 3 events in a row, and this is like universally true in like every nonprofit we've ever modeled, which is a lot, is that attending a 3rd event is actually the highest likelihood that person will ever make a major gift. In fact, there's no more incremental value even attending a 4th or 5th or 6th. It's like that 3rd event becomes this like magical thing, because the first time you're invited to an event, it's because a friend invited you. It's like, oh, I'm curious, I don't want to say no. The second time, it's like, I could have said no if I didn't like it, but I'm actually going to say yes because I was like mildly curious, even more, a little more curious. The 3rd one, you went on your own. And at that 3rd event, it's like, I'm hooked. Like, I've had the chicken dinner 3 times. I've like, I've heard the stories, and this is now part of my identity. And so we extrapolate that out into all the other ways that nonprofits can build, true engagement, whether it's like, filling out a survey, being willing to advocate for an organization, or attend an event or do some other activity. The more familiar you are, the more likely it becomes part of your identity. And the thing is, the private sector knows this really well. This is why, like, really every progressive for-profit is trying to build community. They're like, at least pretend that they are. But like Patagonia has like a community, which I'm a big fan of. And it's like, I get their impact report and all the stuff. And it's just like a certain vibe when I go into a store, and it's like, you're part of that brotherhood. And at the end of the day, nonprofits, it's crazy, the disconnect, because they are the community.
Yeah.
Like nonprofits are like, 20 years ago when I started nonprofit, we literally opened our doors like Guitar Hero. This is like aging me, but like Guitar Hero was like new. I went to Best Buy and I was like, if you guys donated like a couple Guitar Heroes, we're going to bring into our gymnasium like smoke machines. We're going to like big screens, and like Best Buy sponsor, and everyone in the community was invited. And we were in the middle of three gang territory. We're like in this like safe zone. We had like hundreds of people and kids like ripping on these like Guitar Hero things, and just like people are just like cheering and laughing. It was just like this thing of like nonprofits don't remember that they are the community. You open your doors, like magical things happen, and that can be a digital community and it can be a physical community. So I think we just forget, because something happened 20 years ago when we were the community to when we just started becoming so data focused and so focused on just like the transaction, and just kind of beating the system and building the better mousetrap, that we forgot that somewhere along there the pendulum swung so far. And I truly believe like we've seen where that leads. It's not good, and the pendulum is now swinging back because there's more awareness about where that ends up.
God, it's so good. Yeah. Well, thank you. It's almost like I teed that one. We're in the event space. Yeah.
Well,
No, please go ahead. Continue.
No, and I knew, and I didn't say that because of being in the event space, but I mean, it's something that like really revealed something that I had discounted throughout my career. And we spent a lot of money on events. I mean, at City of Hope, we did 200 events a year across the country. I mean, I was flying all over to like do the thing and shake the hands. And it was like, I didn't recognize how powerful it was, right? Like creating that visceral feeling that I think all humans crave. Like, I mean, unless you're a hermit out in Alaska, right? We're built, right? Like biologically to be in connection with one another. And I think in an extremely transactional world, in the world that's becoming even more, just information based and information overload and opportunity overwhelm, that me moving to Tennessee to have a little bit of space and some chickens is like literally my response to like, okay, I want to like refocus and like get real with a smaller group of people. And that I think plays equally as well to a nonprofit that is representative of a community that you feel like is aligned with your values. And I want to go deeper with that organization. And we're seeing trends in society that really show us like that people are seeking this, and all the way down to like Gen Z and for sure like seeking community in deep ways.
Yeah, and that's where I was like, that's kind of not necessarily where I expected, but where I was hoping you would go with that, like the shrinking donor pool question that I had. I was like, I see no indication that it won't end up that way as long as we're respectful of what we're building, right? And understand respectful of the opportunity, I think, of the responsibility that we have to build that out. Because I actually think that if we do it the right way, if we continue having these conversations, that pool will absolutely grow, like you said, with the community piece.
Right.
It doesn't have to be focused and intentional. Of course. But it's also very interesting when things like that get taken away from you. People clamor for it even more, right? Whether you're aware of it or not, getting taken away from you, right?
Yeah. Now, I think that's a big part of it. It's like now having the data and being confronted with, writing the generosity crisis was not a popular thing. I mean, it was, to write a book called, the generosity crisis to the group of most optimistic people in the world, not like something that gets you invited to a lot of dinner parties. But it became a, ring the bell kind of moment of like, look, if we have to have the difficult conversations. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think the most difficult conversation of all is if there are many more ways to express generosity, and people have this biological need to participate in community and to give, and this is why your brain releases dopamine and serotonin, and so we're biologically built to do this. Are nonprofits, as a nonprofit that I'm leading, or nonprofits, are they an amplifier of a person's generosity? So like I give a gift and now I feel twice as good, or has somehow it become a barrier to generosity? Because if it has become a barrier, I can now go to Patagonia, which is a B Corp. Well, now they're a nonprofit, but even as a B Corp or any other B Corp, and I get the same hit of dopamine and serotonin. I feel really good about it. They're part of my tribe. Or I can go to GoFundMe, which processes 2 transactions per second, 24/7, to express my generosity and feel the immediate impact on that same hit of dopamine and serotonin. So I think wrongly, nonprofits for a long time just thought they were in competition with each other, and they were in competition for discretionary dollars.
Mm-hmm.
They're in competition literally for connection. And that's why I do a lot of keynotes on this competition for connection. It has very little to do with nonprofits. It has to do with every for-profit that has gotten really good at understanding the balance between the heart and the wallet. And, that's the reality. So I think, this is where, the for-profit world has gotten so good at understanding the balance of the heart and wallet, has really, pulling on those heartstrings with, personalization through AI.
Yeah.
And that's where the nonprofit sector has not only the opportunity, but the responsibility to do that.
We said something that got a lot of attention in our world, and even some pushback, frankly, about hey, regardless of the size of the gift, you need to give your donors, or you need to thank your givers, your donors, your investors 7 times before you ask them for money again.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like you probably heard this before,
sure,
right?
Yeah.
But we've had friends on that have mimicked the same sentiment, and I actually don't know where the origination of that. It's a lovely it's a lovely planned gratitude, is what we would call it, right? That's a responsibility. It's not a burden. Some folks in the space would view it as such. But what is, in your opinion and just your experience, what is the disconnect that organizations are having with having that responsibility to get folks to, the outcome's so beautiful. It's been proven. We have the data to back it up. Now we have the tools. And I say this loosely, because I wasn't, in tech to begin with and what have you, but I'm an adopter, obviously. Right. And if you're leading a growing organization, you have to have that curiosity and give your team that empowerment, so to speak, to be curious about these different avenues. I thought of the tool as, okay, this got me off the couch, so to speak, right? Like if I had a blank piece of paper, this filled the paper up using just loose 60% of the way, and I could connect it. I'm not into using AI 100% of the way with my messaging because I want to have my own language and my own authenticity with it. But with the advent of these tools, is it a simple unknowing that stops organizations from adopting these resources to have those conversations that could just be so easy? It seems like.
Yeah. I spend a lot of time with organizations and try to unpack this. And, and I've spent a lot of time interviewing. And actually, we did a survey of 1,000, for-profit professional or nonprofit donors, and then for nonprofit professionals, and at the end of the day, it's actually changed quite a bit already. So, from generative AI came out November 30th, 2022. So it's been, this will be year. Is this year 3? I don't know. I'm
sure.
I'm I don't even know what year it is.
It will be soon.
Yeah, I don't even know what year it is.
No, it is year 3. Pardon me.
I don't bother myself in years. I'm horrible with that.
I get you.
But it went from total skepticism of is sounding authentic the same as being authentic to, okay, well, maybe I can use this. In pretty much in my review and interviews with nonprofits, most nonprofit professionals are using AI, but they're not telling anyone about it. So most of it is shadow AI. Wow. They're doing it incrementally under the table because their leader has not come and said, hey, not that I have all the answers, but we believe that AI is an important part of our future. Yeah. We're going to work together to figure this out. So there's just, it's interesting because there's just a lot of fear of if, I'm going to do something that's going to harm our reputation. There's just lots of excuses, and some of the excuses are valid, but they can be mitigated too. There's a lot of concern about the environmental impact, and as a nonprofits, we're especially sensitive to that. But those are things that we shouldn't, our full stop, don't do this. Yeah. It's look, be curious and find out, how others are doing this. And so I think we're going to get to a point where organizations that use AI will outpace those that don't at an accelerated pace. It's going to be, pretty well known. The individuals that are using AI are going to outpace those that don't. They're going to get promoted and leapfrog others. The organizations that don't are going to seem completely antiquated. And I said this probably in 2018, is that there will be a time when not using AI will seem, in loosely the word criminal, but it will seem completely outrageous to a donor that they won't give to you if you're not using it. People thought I was absolutely nuts. And then fast forward today, if you were an organization and said, you know what, the internet teaches, kids how to build pipe bombs, and it's got a lot of cyberbullying, and, it's increased depression and teen suicide. We're not going to use the internet. How many donors would still give to your organization? none. They'd think you're just like being wasteful if you're going to just, go back to a Rolodex and, just, hang out at Starbucks for Mercedes to pull up or something. Like that's just not an efficient or even an acceptable practice. So the same will be true with AI, is that if you're not leveraging the tools that are affordable and available to you to work more efficiently, to amplify your mission in ways that, matter, and then in that case, build engagement strategies that feel like me. It's like, look, we have this data, we're paying attention, and this feels like me. You're speaking to me in a way that actually resonates. You're telling me the stories that actually I care about. Then it's the disconnect is going to be super wide. It won't be a digital divide. It will be a digital chasm, and that chasm will be, truly AI won't count winners and losers. It will just continue, but there'll be a lot of people left on the side of the road, that will either be consolidated or unfortunately, not exist.
Like you said, they'll be left. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's completely asinine not to. Interestingly, because I wanted to, it's like lofty statement, but just for perspective, I have a pretty decent idea where your thoughts lie about it. But just so folks understand, if they're hearing this kind of for the first time or what have you, or just like doing a more deep dive on their own, this is a bigger shift for our society than even the internet caused.
Yeah, bigger than electricity. Yeah, there's no technology. I mean, and this is where I think probably most people fail to understand the gravity of what AI represents. It's like, because they'll hear terms like it's a horizontal enabling layer that's in all things, and it's like, okay, well, like that. What does that mean for me? It means that literally, like, of any invention that any technology that humans have ever created, AI is bigger, and then all of them combined. Like, I mean, it is that profound, because humans have never created technology that self-improves. I think that's the part where it's like, we don't have this AI that like, yeah, it's okay, but it kind of sucks. The reality is like, we have baby AI right now. Like, it's like, it's the worst it will ever be. And then tomorrow, and then the next day, and the next day. But these changes don't happen incrementally, they happen exponentially. And what happens when you have a tool that self-improves, it's not reliant on people, right? So there's no more limitation of like really smart, kids in Silicon Valley wearing hoodies to work every day, like programming, cool stuff. It's now like the acceleration. And so that's showing up in big ways. I mean, it's only been almost 3 years, generative AI, things that, in 2022, we were like writing poems about our dog having a picnic on the moon. And today we're building agentic workflows that literally have like 50 steps and can like scrape data from the internet, like at a dizzying pace. That's in a very short period of time. We're using things like Google's, Notebook LM to replay a book that I wrote in a podcast form. I mean, there's like the things that we couldn't even conceive of 2 years ago are happening now. And last week, Elon's company X, Grok, there's a test that is kind of the new Turing test, and the Turing test is like basically, can a computer fool someone to be a human? And the Turing test was passed, several years ago. So there's a new Turing test is called Humanity's Last Exam, and the best model in the market was Claude up until last week, and it could pass Humanity's Last Exam, which was actually it was created by like 1,000 PhDs around the world. So it's like the subject domain expertise in like all the subjects. And Grok was passing, or Claude was passing it up until last week around 20%. Grok comes out last week, takes the test, and passes at 44.4%. So like these, just to amplify, like these exponentials will not change. These will only continue bigger, go from 20%. And just like this little arms race of like who can be better to like 40% in one shot in 1 week is remarkable. So I think it's like, hold on to your hat, because things are just going to continue to accelerate. And I think as AI, the future of AI will reflect the values of humans today. It's imperative that our sector is very present and has a very loud voice in the creation of what that AI will look like. So I think that's like the moral imperative of this. As nonprofit professionals, we have a moral imperative to essentially, build the AI that our kids will be using, essentially.
Totally. Yeah, it's like you said, paraphrasing, it's like humans are not the gatekeepers.
Right. No,
Right?
not anymore. Not even remotely.
And there's going to be, it's dependent on human input for the morality side.
Right. Yeah. And our sector represents I'd say not all of it, but a really nice chunk of morality that's a little bit different. I mean, you think about the average person that participates in any kind of like charitable participation is someone who believes that, there's something more in life than just what consuming, right? Just
Right.
that representation of like, I can go through life and I can like get all this stuff and I can buy fun things and all that. But I have this like burden that it's not just about that there's a higher purpose, that there's something that when I leave this planet after this, the period of time that I'm here, that I've made and enriched somebody else's life. Not all people feel that way, but I believe that people that do that and represent our sector should play an outsized role in helping shape what the future of AI looks like.
I feel like you're at the forefront of that, and you're doing it. We're grateful for it. I want to. We can't do it on this episode, but at least we can start the conversation, so to speak, or just talk to folks listening. I wanted to take an opportunity just to, if you don't mind, Nathan, and don't hate me for having to get elementary about it, right? Because I'm learning too. But I just you just said generative AI started November 30th, 2022. For the folks who don't even know what generative AI is,
Sure.
predictive AI, supercomputing. Do you mind just giving your synopsis of those? Just once again, just so folks can go, oh, okay, yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Normally, I have a slide where it has like a toolbox, and if you think about the
Yeah,
toolbox in your garage,
yeah,
you've got different tools for different things. So, like,
yeah.
you've got a saw that you use to cut a piece of wood, but you're not going to hammer a nail with it. And you've got a hammer that you hang a picture with, but you're not going to cut a piece of wood with it. So there's various tools in the toolbox, and each tool has a specific purpose. And AI is very similar. Most people don't know that the roots of AI actually are very old. They go back to 1955. And, Rockefeller Foundation actually funded the first exploration that coined the term artificial intelligence, a guy named John McCarthy at Dartmouth College. And, the idea was that we could train a computer how to play chess, because chess has a certain number of moves and it could be a million moves. But at a certain point, like, a computer should be able to predict all the best moves. And they thought that would take about a summer. That actually took like 40 years. And,
Oh, wow.
I was actually done until like 1984 or something like that,
That's a
that
lot of
they
moves.
could beat it. Right. It took a long time. It was much harder. And then, then we see the accelerated pace from there, because a few years later, they taught DeepMind. Google DeepMind actually beat the grandmaster at playing the game Go, which they thought was impossible because it required a lot of intuition and math. And so all of that type of AI, all the way up until 3 years ago, was called predictive AI. And that really is, there were some other things like natural language processing and stuff, but it was largely like machine learning and deep learning to predict, like, Samsung wants to know, like, who are the people we should target that are most likely to upgrade their cell phone. Those are like it's just like analytics on steroids, and
Yeah.
they became really good at it. So predictive AI really came along in its own, and finally, because there's some AI winters in like the 90s that was like, just things were not working out. But by 10 years ago, predictive AI became really well respected, and you could see the math behind it. It was finding really good correlations. And so, full steam ahead. Social media really amplified that. Like, most of social media is like predicting, like, what am I like every single time you swipe is an algorithm, and that algorithm is predicting, am I going to like it, am I going to share it, or am I going to swipe right by it? If I swipe by it, it gives me a new treatment, and if I like it or share it, heaven forbid it's a cat video, I get like 10 million other cat videos, and it's just like you're in that loop. So that was the limitation. It was just like predicting things. But the advent of generative AI, so most people know of like ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude. Generative AI is a type of AI that's very different, in the sense that predictive AI is about taking all the data and actually creating insights from it. But like, I have a million data points, and it's trying to tell me the 10 that I should pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
The generative AI is very different. They're called foundation models or large language models. They all mean the same thing. And all that is that basically they found out that if you had enough data and you were able to scrape every ounce of like every word that was ever on the internet, I mean, even goes to like hieroglyphics, and like since the beginning of time, like every book, every magazine, every stupid blog that people posted, every rant on Reddit, whatever it is, that if you had enough, it turns out that humans are not as creative as we thought we were, or unpredictable as we thought we were. If you had enough data, you could be like that. There's that cartoon. I usually show it, but it's the train going down the train tracks really fast, but the conductor's sitting on the front of the train and he's laying down the tracks because it just feels like this out of control thing, and he's
Totally.
laying down the tracks.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, when you go into ChatGPT, it doesn't just like magically appear for you. It actually goes, line by line by line. You could see it like unfolding. It's literally laying down the tracks. It's saying, I've seen these words before, and it's creating the probability that based on the words that it's seen before and based on what it knows from you and what you're looking for, there's a high probability that the most likely scenario is I'm looking for something that looks like this. So it's just literally taking all the world's information, but instead of creating less information from it, like predictive AI, it's actually creating more information. So it's like the other side of a two-sided coin. So one is creating specificity, the other is creating action. And I think the important thing for most people, because it can feel very overwhelming, it's like you've got Microsoft Copilot, and you've got Gemini, and you've got ChatGPT, and you've got Anthropic Claude, and you've got Facebook Llama, whatever, is that it doesn't matter which one you use because they're all the same. They're literally built on the exact same architecture.
Okay.
They are built on the same data set. The only difference is they've been tuned a little bit differently. And so I'd like to encourage people to, like, next time you go to the grocery store, just marvel at how many different brands of bottled water there are. And I don't remember if we talked about this in the book, but like I one day sat in the store, I'm like, there's an entire aisle, only in America, I think you have an entire aisle of an entire grocery store full of bottled water. And they're like blue and pink and green and square and circle and with a hint of lemon or whatever.
And they're canned and boxed and bottled.
Right.
Yeah,
But if you look at the ingredients of every single one of those, the number one ingredient is water.
Yeah.
They're all the same. So they have little flavors, in or differences in them that it's like, well, I like that better because whatever. I like it being bottled at the source or whatever that means. And the same thing is that all generative AI is the same. It's just to find the one that suits you the best. And so try them all, experiment with them. And then when you pick one, it's better to stay with one. And once you pick one, because it actually, in most cases, will develop memory about you. So like ChatGPT has memory. And so you were saying earlier that, it like knows your voice better, can get you to 60% instead of 10%. My GPT probably knows me 80% at this point. So I can power through something that would take me 4 hours in a half an hour now. And so because you're sticking with it and you're actually like, just getting more familiar with it and it gets more familiar with you, then, you'll be that far better off. And so, pick the bottled water you like the best, and go from that. And then outside of that, there are, subsets of AI like robotics, obviously, and wearables, or just like how those AI software end up in a device that like, vacuums your house or whatever. And that will be a crazy world because we're going to have a lot of like humanoid robots in our houses in the future, like not too far distance future. We have Roombas, which is an example of that. It's like it's scanning your house and like making predictions on things. And then the last part, because you asked, not necessarily supercomputers. Supercomputers are just big computers,
Right.
but we're moving where all AI is moving to is essentially a phase called AGI, Augmented General Intelligence, or ASI, Artificial Superintelligence. And at that point, basically in AGI, computers will outperform a human in almost every domain. So it could basically pass humanity's last exam, but it also has like a reasoning and it has the ability to like think a little bit in its context. When we hit augmented or artificial superintelligence, ASI, that means that we've developed a computer that is better than a human at every domain. And so that, it depends on who you ask and when that will happen, but we're somewhere, in the early, 2030s that will have, one or two of the both. It depends on how optimistic you are about it. But most people believe AGI it's possible now that we came over that hurdle of not even knowing if it was possible, but it is definitely possible based on the path that we're going. There's a really great website people can check out called AI2027.com, which goes into this very detailed analysis of like how fast things are going. By the end of 2027, we end up in this information explosion. Like there's just like no more original content. It's just like content's being created at this dizzying pace. And so I don't encourage people to read it before bedtime like I did, but so Yeah, so that's all that. And then the last part is quantum computing, but we need a whole nother podcast for quantum. Quantum
Yeah.
computing is real. It's coming. It's not coming. It's already here. And by 2033, well, we're fully expected to have fully like functioning quantum computers at scale, which mean that all bets are off on anything that was not possible. Like a quantum computer can solve a math problem that would take the fastest computer in the world. I think it's 20,000 years or 30,000 years. It's like very long time. It can solve the same math problem in about 5 minutes. So it is, and that's like actual like real like they put to test today.
Yeah.
So so we've got a lot of change coming, and I think that's
Yeah, it sounds like it.
more important to like ground ourselves on what's real and
Yeah.
who we belong to and who we, in terms of like what do we associate with, what our values are as individuals, what our values are as an organization. And with all that, I think it's super important to say no when it's not aligned with our values. Easy to say, hard to do.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the nonprofit sector will be presented with lots of opportunities to do things that maybe aren't aligned with your values. And I think it's a time that we'll have to really practice saying no more habitually.
Like a level of discernment and once again responsibility that will come with it. Yeah. I'm backtracking a little bit, Nathan, but I really love how you laid out the different tools like OpenAI, Gemini, Grok, Claude. What was Microsoft's? I haven't played with
Copilot.
I haven't played with Copilot yet. Pardon me. What was interesting was like just peeling the curtain back on my own journey. Is like I just started vibing with OpenAI. Grok. I played with Grok. Yeah. And so just for folks listening, that once again, just you've demystified it. We're removing fear and all that. And once again, these are tools that will learn us in the best possible way. I hear you saying, "Hey, try them all. Spend a little bit of time with all of them." Getting into the weeds a little bit about application. Do you recommend for folks listening that they, use their voice? Or you know what I mean? Or like just give folks some, just a couple, like just honestly, just really quick tips just to get off the couch, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, and again, each of those has their own little nuances. Like Grok is trained on a lot of Twitter data, so it has a bit of a personality. If you want, like, I get enough attitude at my house, so I'm like, I don't need it in my AI. So like,
you're funny.
Funny enough that OpenAI, which is ChatGPT, created a model called Monday, which has the same snarky personality, and I'm like, why? Like, I do not need that.
Totally.
So the workhorse for most people is ChatGPT because it's just widely known, and most of them are $20 if you're going to pay. And I encourage people to pay for the paid version. Pick the one. It's only on month-to-month basis, but if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. That's true in any technology. So if you want access to privacy around your data, then pay the $20 a month. If you don't care and it doesn't matter and you're writing, poems about your dog having a picnic on the moon, who cares? But at the end of the day, ChatGPT has some advantages that the others don't. It has memory, and so it actually gets to know your persona a little bit better. Mm-hmm. A lot of people who like writing are, Claude is actually the highest performer in like writing, but it doesn't retain memory of you. So you kind of have to start over every time with like, this is my writing style. Here's an example of my things. And I just find that tiring. Yeah. But it's a very responsible model. That's a really responsible company. It's actually a B corporation. Okay. So,
whereas OpenAI, if you don't want me, sorry for interrupting, Nathan, but OpenAI is a nonprofit, correct?
It is. Yeah. In the loosest
ironically
sense.
Enough. Yeah. Isn't that funny?
Well, I think it's confusing for people too. It's like, I'm going to give to your nonprofit, but like they're a nonprofit. Like that doesn't seem like why do you need money then? And it's a really weird dynamic for sure.
Sorry for interrupting, but
no. And then like Microsoft Copilot, if you're using Microsoft products, it's like embedded. So if I'm in Excel or PowerPoint or Word, it's like the little button's already there, and it's like summarize this thing for me or analyze this spreadsheet for me. It's like and for people that don't know, it actually. Microsoft Copilot is ChatGPT. Microsoft owns 50% of OpenAI. So it is that. And then the other, I didn't mention, but for anyone that uses Gmail or is like in the Google suite, Gemini model is actually really good. It was not good until recently, but they finally kind of have figured some things out. And so Gemini is like in all of your Google Docs and your email and stuff, and not your calendar yet, but it's like most things just to kind of simplify your life and like kind of enhance your work. And so they're all built the same way to create some efficiency, to give you that power boost, to like, at the end of the day, A/B testing will show, Harvard just did a study on this, but most universities have studied too with college students that if you're using an AI, some of the benefits are obviously you do your work faster. That's not surprising.
Efficiency.
But have a higher degree of accuracy at the end. And even college students that have to create business ideas and they do A/B testing, when they're reviewed by an outside like peer review board, the most, like literally 80% of the ideas that actually move forward to the next round are AI created, not human created. So better, faster and better. But the third emotional benefit, and this is the Harvard study with Procter and Gamble, showed that the net effect of you using an AI and feeling like you have quote unquote a co-pilot, you have like a partner working with you, the same emotional benefit of you working with a team. So if you're a solo contributor and you're working from home, it can feel very isolating. Having quote unquote a relationship with your AI to help you, and I'm not saying from emotional support, but a lot of people use it for that. I'm not, but it's the number one use of ChatGPT right now is emotional support, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's moved
like the
from
movie
like,
Her. It's like the movie Her.
yeah, I think, and this speaks back to the people wanting to connect, I think, in some way. But all to say is that I think, pick a tool, develop, some rapport with it so that you understand what it can and can't do. And then, basically assume it can until it proves you wrong. And, I would say, AI can be that tool without a problem. So identify a problem, like identify something that's like small, like low stakes, high yield, high reward problem that you're like, I really don't like doing this thing. I wonder if AI can help me. And then go to it and say, hey, I've got this problem. I don't like to do this thing. It's just been a pain for us or an organization or just me personally. What are some ways to overcome this? And I think you'll be surprised, like all of a sudden that problem, you have new ways of thinking about it or new approaches to solving it.
I love it. It's good. Excellent feedback for getting folks just that nudge, that encouragement. Because I think, obviously most folks, if I have to assume, Nathan, most folks aren't using it in our space, right? So, right?
Yeah.
Most
people are trying it to limited success.
Okay,
yeah. Like good. It's fairly nascent still, but they're kind of poking around the edges, I think. And unfortunately, some are dismayed and they just give up. And the reality of an exponential technology is the worst it will ever be is today, because tomorrow will be a new thing and much better. Like even AI, generative AI, in 2022 was kind of horrible compared to what it is today. Yeah. I mean, just like what it's able to do and how it's able to think and deep research and all the just different functionality that we didn't even think about that in 2022. And now it's like, what else can it do? It's pretty crazy.
And it gets better every day. You've said that multiple times. I think it's something to really, really double click on for folks. Coming full circle, it's very interesting too. Is like when we think about like attracting talent to your organization, keeping talent, attracting folks to give to your organization or want to invest. Once again, coming full circle, it just seems that curiosity piece has to be there for leadership. In our space, it just has to be there, or you're going to get left. Frankly, it just sounds like we're going to get left behind, right?
And the good thing about curiosity is it's free, and we all, we grew up curious. I mean, we did all kinds of like stupid things as kids, just because we were like wondering, well, like what would happen if I jumped off the roof or what, like whatever. Right. I probably did more than the average, but when I've implemented AI at a lot, like predictive AI at a lot of nonprofits. I mean, about 150 of the top nonprofits in the country. And I would say definitively success or failure between those organizations had very little to do with data and models, and it had everything to do with people and culture. Yeah. Curiosity is the number one, power boost, superpower that any person can have. Because we have models that know something about everything. They can do almost anything at this point. If you're curious, and this changes entirely like how you hire and how you reward. I didn't reward questions more than answers at any point in my career. Like I thought questions were annoying. Like go focus on your job. Like go get your eyes on your paper, do your job, hit your KPIs, get your bonus, whatever. Now, I would absolutely hire the curious generalist all day long versus a subject matter expert. That's like 100, 200-year-old shift. Like we no longer hire the person that has the greatest number of years in that one thing. It's like the subject matter expert. No way. I want the curious generalist all day long. That person that questions like what's possible and asks what if, and then goes for it. Like that's the That's the secret sauce today, which is amazing because that just provides tons of opportunity for so many people, to really flex that curiosity.
It's tremendous. It's I love your positive spin on the whole thing. I'm saying it loosely, but it's so good to hear. And so I applaud it.
Well, that's good. It's penance for writing the generosity crisis, I think. But I have to, and even that, I mean, it's not about optimism or pessimism. It's a realistic preparation for what's already happening. Like it's the reality around us. The genie's not going back in the bottle. This is our present day reality, and these are the opportunities. And at the end of the day, like I think we have so much opportunity to reinvent what generosity looks like, what precision philanthropy looks like, what we're capable of doing as organizations. So, I'm going to go down fighting. I mean, I might be dead wrong, but at the end of the day, my tombstone will say he fought.
No, I love it. The precision philanthropy piece is my favorite chapter in the book, but I'm biased. But in the new book, which obviously we'll have in the show notes, Nonprofit AI. You're the inventor of Fundraising.ai. Is that how you prefer folks finding you? What's a great way for folks to find you and show you some support for us to put your business in the street and for folks to pepper you with some
that's
questions?
Awesome. I mean, I love my LinkedIn community. I literally wake up like I did this morning at 4 a.m. and I drafted like 3 different articles. So LinkedIn
with AI.
I usually voice text into Apple Notes, and I speak in almost promptees, and then I'll go to AI and it'll piece it all together. This kind of like
with the help of, sorry man, I'm taking the piss, but
right. So LinkedIn. Fundraising AI is completely open source community. It's open for everybody. Anybody can go download, watch. We've now 15,000 people from 110 countries. So if you're looking for community in the space and want to know like who's doing what and get connected, fundraising.ai is like this amazing, it's where most of my volunteer effort goes. And then and I have a website myself, nathanchappell.com, and that's where people can listen to an 18-minute AI generated podcast of each of my books. So you don't even have to buy it. You could just go and listen to it. And if you like it, then buy it. Yeah. But those were created with Notebook LM, which is a Google technology, and it's amazing. So you can go in there and check it out and listen to what it's all about. So a lot of different ways.
So cool, man. Wow. I love every guest that comes on. Everyone gets an invite to come back. Obviously, I'm going to extend it to you, but I've taken a tremendous amount of notes just listening to you. So awesome. I can't thank you enough. I am a true student of this and of fundraising in general. And it's a gift. So I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you so much for taking the time. And thanks for so much for shining a light. It seems like things are, I did mention your invite to come back. Sorry, man, we're going to have to book you because this is going to be changing at such a rapid pace. And who knows what you'll pump out between now and the next time you come on, because you'll have to talk about it. I hope that's okay. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Right totally got me in.
Right on, brother. Thank you so much, Nathan, for the time and appreciate you. And we'll see you at Raise, I believe, in September as well.
Yep. Yeah. Right around the corner.
Far out, man. Thank you so much. Appreciate the work you're doing. I mean that. I'm a true fan and a student of what you're putting out there, and we're huge fans of Virtuous as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks so much. Yeah.
There's so many different ways and avenues to get these things accomplished within nonprofits these days. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing, zero-sum game. You're able to be flexible and nimble and find things, and that is where, to me, nonprofits do operate a whole lot like entrepreneurial endeavors, where we're going to need to change. We're going to need to be as nimble as we possibly can.